democracy as Americans, and the fact that you are participating and coming here and wanting to learn about this process just says so much about you as a community. So thank you very much. My name is Stephanie Smith, and I am the Director of Election Services for Best. We are serving as the city's demographer consultant with regard to this redistricting effort. And tonight's workshop is going to be, it's interactive, actually. I would like questions, raise your hands. Just stopped, yeah. If you want me to stop and clarify something, please don't hold your questions to the end. Just raise your hand. Let me know that you want to say something. I'd really appreciate that. Today, our agenda for tonight, we're going to talk about the process of redistricting mean to redraw the council's district boundaries. Also, we're going to review the basics of redistricting, the legal ramifications of redistricting. What are the laws that inform this decision of the city council? And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about ways that the public can become involved and use the mapping tools that have been developed for the residents. We have a couple of options. We have a paper mapping kit. We have an online mapping tool that you can use, and I'm going to demonstrate how to use those. So let's get started. The city council elects their members for 4-year terms. We have a 2-district plan here in the city of Palm Desert, and the District 2 is comprised of 4 seats. We have 2 seats on the ballot in 2022 and 2 seats on 2024. District 1 is comprised of 1 seat, and it is on the ballot again in 2024. So the process is basically spelled out in state law, but it requires multiple public hearings. And then if the city wants to expand upon that, you can add workshops and other informational meetings. For example, tonight, first of all, there was an informational meeting that was held in December, and we came to the city council and we basically introduced the topic of redistricting, and then we discussed the communities of interest, things together as members of the community that mean that they should be kept together in a single district. We held public hearing number 1 just last week, and we introduced again the redistricting topic in a more formal setting, allowed the public to comment and to raise issues or to just basically tell us what they thought about redistricting. And we wanted to also get direction from the city council on drawing of the district maps. So then tonight we have a public workshop where we're going to be on a less, it's a lot more interactive. People can talk. You don't have to wait till the formal point in the agenda for you to speak, and you can ask questions as we go along. And then after this, my map analysts are going to start drawing maps. They're going to be, we've actually started already after the direction we got from the, and we're going to be presenting those to the city council at the second public hearing. And it's just a start. They're just starting points based on the law and direction that we got from the council. And then they can request revisions. They can say, boy, we like that, but let's see what happens with the public, how they feel, what kind of maps they might submit, or gosh, you totally missed the mark. And can you go back to the drawing board and start over, or maybe make some modifications in between. And then we have public hearing number 3, where hopefully by that point, we can narrow the selection 1 or 2 maps that they might be considering. And then we move on to public hearing number 4, where hopefully the council is able to select a preferred map and introduce the legislation that will approve it. Now, throughout the public hearing process, the public is entitled and expected and encouraged to participate, to comment, to look at the maps, tell us what you think, tell us how you feel, and submit your own maps if you'd like, that the council will consider. Any map that's submitted by a member of the public, my team will go and analyze it for compliance with federal and state law. We'll make sure that it matches the population requirements and that it meets, that the demographic analysis is completed, so that when we present a public map, we present it with the same care that we would present any map that we drew. So what are the rules of the road? Essentially, redistricting is what I like to call the 3-legged stool. And the federal law is equal population, and that is derived from the US Constitution and the 14th Amendment that did away with the 3/5 compromise. People guaranteed to be counted as whole numbers of persons. And so that was for the purposes of equal representation. The Federal Voting Rights Act addresses the voters. The Federal Voting Rights Act addresses the voice of minority voters and ensures that we don't intentionally draw a map that limits the voice of minority voters from electing the candidate of their choice. If we have the ability to create a majority minority voting district, we have an obligation under the Federal Voting Rights Act to do so. And then lastly, no gerrymandering in the sense that we don't intentionally draw districts that preclude a minority voter from electing the candidate of their choice. After we look at federal law, then we jump over to state law, and it's essentially codified in the Fair Maps Act. The Fair Maps Act requires that districts be geographically contiguous. They have to, you can't have islands in the middle of a district that belong to the same district. So you can't have parts of a district that are over here and then parts of the same district over there if they don't touch somewhere, always touching itself. Sounds like an interesting concept. Yes, they must be contiguous. Geographic integrity of local neighborhoods. We do our absolute best to keep to the extent practicable. I'm getting stage directions here. To the extent practicable, that the neighborhoods stay together, that we recognize people that go to the same schools, people that go to the same homeowners association, people that go to the same district. They need to be easily identifiable and understandable. And that means that a person looking at it can say, oh, it makes sense. I know why they did it that way. Yes, that neighborhood goes together. That neighborhood goes together. And then last, the attempt is made to make them geographically compact. In other words, you don't like weird shapes. You want to look at triangles, squares, rectangles, things that make sense. Once we've met the criteria, then you jump over to known as traditional principles. And they start with the first thing we realize, the number of voters that are shifting. If you are scheduled to be voting in 2022, we want to ensure that you don't get moved to a cycle that goes to 2024. We can't always guarantee that. We can't always assure that. Sometimes the population requirements force us to move voters. But the goal is to make that as minimum as possible so that there's not a 6-year gap in between when you get to elect the candidate of your choice. Future population growth can be considered, and that's really more for areas that are under development. I believe that Palm Desert, for the most part, is pretty built out. There isn't a lot of large-scale planned communities that haven't been built yet, but that for other communities that say, especially other communities here in the county that have a lot of open development land, they can consider perhaps a planned development that's been approved and the building permits have been pulled, but it's pretty stringent. You can only do that if you absolutely need it to achieve some other purpose, such as creating a majority minority voting district. And then lastly, we attempt to preserve the core of the existing districts to the extent practicable, because you're used to it. You're used to who you vote for. You're used to who your neighbors are that vote in the same elections, and we like to keep it familiar for the residents. And these principles have all been established through various cases that have wound their way through the federal courts. So they're not codified in law, but they've actually been decisions that you can take these matters into consideration when drawing maps. So just a quick look at our existing districts. And as you can see, we have District 1 in the center, and then District 2 wraps around. Now, Desert, when they transitioned to districts, it was done so under a threat of litigation under the California Voting Rights Act. I think most of you are familiar with that. And in the settlement of that litigation, an agreement was entered into with the plaintiffs that established the 2-district plan, and basically an 80-20 plan. So whereas the requirements are for equal population, the city has that settlement agreement that establishes the population standards for the various districts. So when I talk about population going forward, I'm going to talk about basically the 80-20 concept. And our current districts, for the most part, they are compact, are generally shapes that make sense. We do have the issue of We do have the issue of a little non-contiguity over towards the left. Maps, these districts were drawn prior to the adoption of the Fair Maps Act. The Fair Maps Act, which was went into effect in January, was the first one to require contiguity. Contiguity was previously known as just the principle that you strive for. Now it must be fixed. So we draw maps that don't have sections of the district not touching each other. And for the purposes of definition of contiguity, the legislation actually went so far as to say that touching on opposing opposite corners of an intersection does not mean it is contiguous. So as you can see from our current map, that we will need to make some adjustments to be compliant with the Fair Maps Act. So this slide is really, really important in the sense of determining where do we stand in terms of the population, the settlement agreement. So our current district boundaries with the 2020 census data laid on top indicate that District 1 represents a population of 18.1%. It also is which is below the range that is permitted at 18.4 and 21.6. Also, with our current census data, we can see that the citizen of voting age population has taken. I'm going to keep trying to move here. Okay. Okay, awesome. Okay. We're just trying to make sure the sound works well for the stream. So we definitely want to we definitely have to adjust the district boundaries to get back into that permitted population balance range. Now, we would be adjusting the boundaries following the census and using the 2020 data. So this is what this slide represents. I do want to point out there are a couple of acronyms on here. We have the acronym NL, that stands for non-Latino. We have the acronym Asian. It actually stands for American Indian, Alaskan Native. So that's what some of those, the CVRA stands for the California Voting Rights Act. So what are some of the issues here? We have the fact that our total deviation exceeds the permitted range under the city's 2018 settlement agreement. We have the knowledge that we can draw a majority minority district because it is possible. District 1 is currently in voting age population. The current district boundaries must be adjusted for population. So what are some of the things that we use to consider when we draw those boundaries? The first and foremost are these preeminent considerations. These are non-negotiables. Our districts must have the equal population within the settlement ranges that were established by the agreement. They have to be geographically contiguous and they must be geographically compact. What are communities of interest? Once we do those non-negotiables, those preeminent considerations, we look at communities of interest. So physical boundaries, are there any natural or artificial barriers? Things as rivers, creeks, the highways, perfect example of something that uses a barrier, a boundary. Roadways, railways. Are there any parks or schools, neighborhoods around them that make sense to keep? So those are taken into consideration. We also take into consideration special district service areas or any other federal, state, or county division. Other areas that belong to another government agency in the sense that they only have one district. Interestingly enough, communities of interest do not include the residencies and political parties. We have a large population of Democrats here. We can't consider that a community of interest. If you have a large concentration of Republicans that live over here, we can't put them together as a community of interest. Now, they might have a community of interest because they share a same homeowners association or their kids all go to the same school, but it can't be tied to political partisan politics. So where do we get our information from? First and foremost, and in a perfect world, we have been doing this last year. Statutorily, the data is supposed to be released to us in April of the year following the US Census. However, the COVID-19 pandemic, first of all, delayed the collection of data. Census workers weren't going door to door. They had a lot of issues with collecting it online. The ones that were mailed in, then they had to be processed. And so it took a long time to first collect the data and then analyze it. So whereas it should have been analyzed and released to us in April of last year, we didn't receive it until September 27th. So we got a late start. Every agency in the state of California has gotten a late start. And it is kind of a mad dash to the finish. But we first and foremost get the demographic data. And then then we rely on staff. We're not familiar necessarily with every jurisdiction that we're supporting in this effort. I don't live in Palm Desert, whereas I've lived in Riverside County for 34 years. I don't live in the Coachella Valley. So I don't know this area as well as the staff does. So we'll reach out to the staff and ask their opinions on particular neighborhoods or ideas that we might have with regard to grouping districts together. We rely incredibly heavily on public input. As I said in the very beginning, districting, elections, representation is the heart of democracy for us as Americans. And so we rely on what you have to say. We take that information and we try and synthesize it into a map that meets what you would like to see, but also complies with the various laws and regulations that we're required to balance. And then lastly, we take the council's input. Ultimately, it is the council's authority to adopt the map of their choice. But so we listen to them. What do they want to see as far as the maps being brought? So for tonight, we wanted the redistricting website. I'm sorry, redistricting process is. I'm going to demonstrate how to use the paper and the online kits, the online tools. And then we also wanted to describe the ways that the public may engage. So our timeline, this is basically that first slide, but now it has dates attached to it. So last Thursday, we had the first public hearing, and that is any draft map release. We can't the maps until after at least one public hearing to make sure that the public understands this is not a foregone conclusion. This is not something that the council has decided in the past. We didn't even draw maps until we had that hearing. Tonight we have our public engagement workshop, and it's here in the evening. We have the second public hearing where we have our look at draft maps. That will be next Thursday. And then February 11th is the date that's been established for the public to submit maps for consideration at the public hearing. The reason that date is coming up on us relatively quickly, we need to publish at least 7 days prior to the council meeting, and we have to have time to run analytics, do the demographic analysis, and to see if they that meet the population thresholds. And that's simply so that we can let the council know, this is a map that meets a lot of the criteria, but it needs a little bit of help in this area. So if it's a map, then they can direct us to make some of the adjustments to get it into compliance so that they could adopt it. So that's an important deadline. And then February 17th is when we'll publish maps prior to the next public hearing. We're going to have a community workshop on the 22nd, and we'll be reviewing draft maps again with maps tonight. But at the second public workshop, we're doing draft maps with you. On the 24th, we have a public hearing for them to consider and propose revisions, or hopefully they can narrow their focus, maybe select one preferred maps, that then when we come back at the fourth public hearing, to just make a decision. And the fourth public hearing is scheduled for March 10th. In between that, we've got the date we're going to publish those draft maps. That's on March 3rd. And then April 17th, and that's the important deadline. That is the date that we must take action, final action, in order to comply with the law November of 2022. Now, I realize it doesn't allow for as much time as you would like to take necessarily in a perfect world. But we're dealing with the results of the delayed census data, and we're dealing with trying to get all of the required elements done, continue to engage the public as much as possible, allow you to participate, but we still are just bumping up against that piece of requires us to have it done by April 17th. And that's in time for the November 2022 election. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about tools. The paper kits. And we have these available, and please grab one on your way out if you didn't do so already. And this allows someone who maybe isn't comfortable using online software or going on the computer and drawing things on a digital format. It allows you to create your own map and submit it to the city. Now, it has the populations of each of the census block groups in the city printed on the map. So that you just basically have to add it up yourself, how many people are in this group, how many people are in that group, and put them on the map. If there are lines that are drawn here that you would like to see differently, just go ahead and draw it the way you want. Now, ideally, you would stick to the census block groups because we have to stick to the census block groups. We're not able to split census blocks in drawing the final maps. However, not every census block is drawn on this map. They're grouped together. We can split census block groups into the smaller census blocks. So if the lines don't quite match up the way you'd like to see, just draw them the way you'd like, draw them the way you, and then we'll take it, we'll do our best to analyze it as close as possible, and then we'll present that to the city council. Also, the permitted population ranges are included on this, so you know what numbers you're shooting for, okay? It's available in English and Spanish. So if you have neighbors or friends, coworkers that perhaps they would be more comfortable reading the instructions in Spanish, we have those available. These are also available on the city's dedicated redistricting website that can be reached in one of two ways. You can go directly to the Engage Palm Desert site, or we have a dedicated URL for redistricting, which is mappalmdesert.org. Everything related to redistricting can be found by going to mappalmdesert.org because it will redirect you immediately to the city's Engage Palm Desert redistricting page. So you can download a couple if you'd like. If you want more, you just download them and print them yourself. City Hall will also have copies of these. You can ask for additional ones by stopping by City Hall. And again, they are available in English and Spanish. Once you've drawn a map, then you can either submit it back to the city and they'll get it to me, or my email is actually on here and you can scan it and email it directly to me. Either way is fine. They're going to get them to me as quickly as they're turned in. But if you wanted to skip the middleman, you can just send it straight to me. That's perfectly fine. My email is at the bottom. The reason we ask for your name and a telephone or an email is so if I have questions, if I want clarification, it's impossible to draw a map on a piece of paper to hand out to you that's the fine detail that we might like to see. So as you draw these, I might ask you clarifications on what streets you were thinking about, especially if you split census blocks. If you keep them to the blocks that are aligned here, that's easy. I can figure that out. But if you draw lines that perhaps, if you color outside the line, you don't stay in the lines, I might have to give you a call and ask you what streets were you thinking about including in that particular area. So line, and then we have copies over here. The next tool that we have is an online tool, and I'm actually going to demonstrate how to use it. Now, have anybody, when you did the transition, did anybody use the online tool? I know the city had one available then. Did anybody use that when we did the transitions to draw a map? You did? And it was the Maptitude tool, correct? Do you remember that? Yeah, I believe it was. I'm going to be very honest. Maptitude was the big ticket back when everybody was making these transitions, but it was a clunky tool. It's not as easy to use as we would like necessarily. We have a tool that we find that is a little bit easier. I think it's a little more user friendly. There are detailed instructions that are available on the website. It's a PDF of a slideshow that has page by page instructions on how to do it. It's kind of like an instruction manual for the software. So I would encourage anyone that's looking at drawing maps online, first of all, is to go to mappalmdesert.org, go to the Draw a Map section, and download those instructions. And so you have them in front of you when you're getting ready to draw the map. There's also a narrated PowerPoint that takes you step by step through the process. Basically, you get to hear my voice again as we go through the slideshow that you've just printed out. And there's actually some screen sharing, and I'll demonstrate on the narrated video how to work through the program. But I'm going to do that tonight because I think that people learn differently. Some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, some people just learn by doing. And I wanted to demonstrate exactly how easy it can be to draw these maps. And if you haven't done it before, I think seeing it sometimes when you get back in front of your own computer makes it a little bit easier. Before I do that, I wanted to, does anybody have any So data for the maps. Well, we would encourage, if you wanted to speak here, we'll capture that input. But really, the public hearings are the best place for you to come and submit your comments, whether they are in written form or in, I'm sorry? Oh, no, they will not. And the reason for that is they will not be considered at the second public hearing. For that is, do you take and the agenda for next week? So there will. That's a great question. Thank you. Are there any others before I show? Okay, let's jump over here, and we're going to hope that the microphone continues to work. Thing that you're going to partnered with Dave's redistricting tool. I talked a little bit about Maptitude. I've done this election process with countless jurisdictions and have used Maptitude for years, and it was just incredibly difficult. And so many of you that participated in the redistricting process at the state level or the congressional level and worked with the California Redistricting Commission or maybe monitored some of that, noticed that there was a different map tool out there, and that was Districtor. Districtor was a great improvement, a lot easier than Maptitude to use, but it turned out to be a little bit like the Tickle Me Elmo of the 2021 redistricting cycle. And they became a little bit over capacity. So we had to find a different tool. Fortunate. Redistricting.org. And the first thing you're going to do is account. And it is completely free, but you do need to log in, create an account and log in. And you can do that in a couple of ways, but the fastest way is to simply click the sign up button. And then it's going to ask you to send in your email and a password. And the reason that you want to have this created account is because it will allow you to go into your maps and look at them later. It'll also allow you to look at maps that were created by other people, not but other people in the community, and look at their maps. Maybe you want to build on it. Maybe you'll see something you like, and maybe you want to tweak it just a little bit. You can duplicate someone else's map and make it your own. So I already have an account. So I'm going to just click to log in. I didn't want to use my professional one because if I were to do that, then you would see just a lot of maps, and it wouldn't be like the first time. So no, we don't want to save this. So when you log in, it actually will take you to the home screen that looks like this. If you have no maps in your own queue, if you have no maps that you've worked on, it'll take you to a screen that looks just like this. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to want to go and the template that's been created for Palm Desert. And you're going to click these, the little bars here, and you go to Maps. You click on My Maps, and you click on Published Maps. Does is it gives you a list of every map that has been published in the entire country. There's a lot of maps here. If you're just curious and you want to Google maybe your home state or something, you can look at that. So you start by going to published maps, and then you're going to enter Palm Desert. Because I have created a template for you that is set up already with your population numbers and with the 2-district plan and the population requirements for those plans. And so I just typed in Palm, and then look at the first thing that came up. It says Palm District Template. And it also has the owner, which is my name, so you know it's the right one. So you click on that, and it'll let you view it, share it, or duplicate it. before you can make your own map, you have to duplicate that map. So then you're going to click duplicate by highlighting it and then clicking here at duplicate. And it takes it a few minutes, depends on your internet speed, but it does take just a second or two. So we'll just hit the refresh button. And there it is. So now, when I see this here, now I have a lot more options. I can edit it, I can share it, I can duplicate this, I can publish it so that other people can use it. I can delete it, I can rename it, label it, send it to groups. Now, I don't need to duplicate it because this is just sitting in my list of maps. And so no one else can see this copy of Palm Desert. No one else can see it at all. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to rename this map because I don't want to get confused with what it is. So let me put a name to it. You can put a description in there that anybody who sees the map can also see that description. Maybe something like this map keeps the Palm Desert Country Club together, or this map highlights a majority minority Hispanic voting district. Something that you want other people to know about your map. If you don't want to put anything in there, you don't have to. Then you hit submit and notice it changed the name of the map. So now if I create a lot of maps, I might say, okay, I'm going to name this one the green map. I'm going to name this one the purple map. I'm going to name this one the downtown map. I'm going to name this one downtown map version 2. Just whatever you think is going to help you remember which map is which. So then now I want to get to the good stuff. I want to start editing the map. So you just highlight it and then you click. And again, some of this depends on your internet speed, and I'm going to wait for it to load. It takes it just a second. The first time it loads takes a lot longer. After you've done it once or twice, it loads much faster. You can hit refresh if you'd like, if it's easier. Anybody know the Jeopardy music? Do, do, do. Mm-hmm. Are we on wireless here? The Wi-Fi? Come on. While that's loading, are there any other questions? Does anyone else? Yes, I have a question back here. The template map that is in the software is a 2-district plan. However, I will tell you that once you create and duplicate the map, you duplicate it, you can change settings. You can change it to be 10 plan, 20 plan. You can change it if you would like. But you cannot do that on the template itself. You have to save it, duplicate it, and create your own map. Any other questions? And I do apologize, it does not normally take this long. I'm wondering if it's the bandwidth. here. I was actually on the Palm Desert template earlier today, and it was drawing maps for me. So oh, you want to try doing that? Oh, yeah, yeah, I'll get out of here. We're going to try and change what internet connection we're using. I do encourage everyone, though, before you start, to visit the redistricting website and just print out the instructions, because it will take you, everything I'm doing here, it'll walk you through that, right? It'll walk you through that. And then if you have about 20 minutes, the MP4 narrated version of that, where you get to hear me walk through the steps, it's about 20 minutes long. That's another great resource, and I would encourage you to do that before you get started. Like any software program, you know, when we first all learned how to use Microsoft Word and Excel and everything, there's a little tiny bit of a learning curve. But I think that having the printed version of the instructions and perhaps taking a few minutes to watch that video can help bring you up to speed pretty quickly. I can say that in some of the other workshops that I have conducted, by the end, there were people in the audience that had their iPads with them, and they were drawing maps on the iPads before they left. So it's not terribly difficult, but seeing it in action is just so helpful. So that's why I really would like to do this for you. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Okay. We're getting there. So there are a couple of tools here. The first one I'm going to do, actually, is the very first step that you'll see in the instructions is once the map loads, is to click on this little gearbox over here. You just click on that, and then you're going to go down to the apply button. You don't have to pay attention to anything it says there other than the apply. And the thing is, this particular, let's see, map settings, just want to make sure it's all correct. Council do districts, they have the custom population. I just wanted to make sure that was all correct. But the very first thing you do is click on the gearbox and then click this apply. And what that does, it sort of reapplies those standard settings to your map. And you should do that the very first thing every time that you bring up your map is just reapply those settings. They're supposed to stick, and I would say probably about 80% of the time they do, but that 20% can be really frustrating when all of a sudden the maps have a different deviation or they have a different number of districts. So what we're going to do is I want to open the district selector. Something is still not quite right, and I don't know why. You know what? I'm going to, for the purposes of this, I'm going to show you something else, a different map. And the reason is I want you to be able to see this, and I don't want to waste your time figuring out why that doesn't work, but we'll make it work. When I get home, I'll figure out why it's not working. I'm going to load this map. So this is every presenter's worst nightmare when you're trying to demonstrate software and the software appears itself not to be working properly. So this is a map that I drew on Saturday at a workshop and for the city of Hanford. And the tools that I need are not loading, both on the Palm Desert map and on the Hanford map. So that tells me that it's a software problem and not a user problem. So it really is every trainer's worst possible nightmare, and I do apologize for that. The challenge is that I'm not going to be able to show you the tools that I want to show you. Because it's just not bringing up the tools necessary to edit the various divisions, the various districts. I'm going to try one more quick thing here. Yeah, it's just not bringing it up. Well, I do apologize for that. I don't know what's going on with the program itself. We'll make sure that we get that straightened out for you. Essentially, it's as simple as selecting a census block. See, all of those purple boxes, they match the census blocks that are on your paper map kit, right? And now none of them are highlighted, so there's no precinct details over there. The term precinct, as it's found in this particular area, it actually means census blocks. When I hover over it, notice the data changes. It tells me what the population of that area is, and it tells me what the ethnic breakdown of that area is. And so that's all data that I'm going to use to draw my map. I'm going to say, oh gosh, there's 1,375 people there. I want to make sure that I keep that together. Or over here, you can just tell how that data changes depending on the district that you're in. I'm wondering. When it changed color because I had originally selected the paintbrush and I wanted to put that one in District 1. And you simply click on the paintbrush. It's letting me do that. I just don't have the ability to get to District 2. You click on your paintbrush, you click here, you click here. Oh gosh, I think that's what I want to do. And notice it tells me where I'm at in the process. I currently have 7,100 people in that district, and that target, I'm still 3,100 over because I want a little over 10,000. So I'm just going to keep adding contiguous census blocks until I get to my target population. So I'm just going to keep doing that. Okay, that's pretty darn good. I'm just 18 away from that ideal number. That's a very, very close number. So I'm going to say that that's District 1. Now, what I would be doing after that, and I will tell you why it's not visible to me at the moment, I do not know. But here in this district selector pane, you'll actually, I'm wondering if it has to do with the laptop because, let me try something here. Nope. In the district selector pane, you can toggle between District 1 and District 2. You actually have a box to check for the district that you're trying to draw. So I'm done with District 1, I would move on to District 2. And then I would add the various places that I want to be in District 2. Now, say I added a block that I wanted to remove, I would just simply click over here on the eraser. And I'm going to take that one out. I don't want that one in District 1 anymore, so I'm going to take that one out. And I'm going to take this one out too, because I don't think it belongs in District 1. And then I want to add some more back because I've got to get to that population. So I'm going to go over here. And I want to show you something that I just did here. Notice I created an island. If this is District 1, I now have an island, and District 2 is no longer contiguous, right? It doesn't touch itself. So that would not be a permissible map. You can certainly submit it. When we analyze it in our narrative to the council, when we show them the map, we'll highlight the pros and cons. And one of the cons being that it is not a contiguously drawn map. So they would not be able to adopt it as is. Now they might like it in other ways, and they might say, you know what, can you make some modifications to make it contiguous? And then we would go back and we would do that. But that is something that you would not be able to have adopted as is. So then you're going to, when the map program is working properly, and then you would select District 2, and you would fill in all of the areas for District 2. Once you're done, the very next thing, well, you can check statistics. Maybe you want to check what are the demographics of this particular map. What is the ethnic makeup with it as drawn? Because notice I showed you how to do it block by block, but this tells you doing it, you can look at your statistics and they'll tell you for the whole map. So there's my statistics button. And it tells me that District 1 has 11,000 people, and it's about 8% over its target population. It also tells me what are the voting age populations there. It is a 23% minority district, and then obviously District 2 is still blank because nothing had been assigned yet to District 2. So you do that by clicking on the statistics tab. You can also download this. It downloads in an Excel spreadsheet. So you can analyze it to your heart's content at home just by downloading it in an Excel sheet. So I'm going to go back to my map. Ideally, I'm going to add all of these blocks to District 2, and then I'm all ready. Let's say I'm done. I'm completely done with the map, and I want to submit it. There are a couple ways to do that. The first way to do it is to go back to your maps. You click on your map, and then you click Publish. And it's a great map. I'm going to keep calling it the same thing, best Palm Desert map ever. And then you can submit Publish. Now that map is now out there for anyone to see. If I were to leave that up there when you go home and you start playing with this program, it'll be there for you if you search Palm Desert. It'll show up under the list of maps. You could then edit that one. You duplicate it and edit if you like. I'm going to unpublish it before we leave here today. But that's how you do that. Once you've drawn a map, I need you to tell me that you've drawn a map. Shoot me an email. In the instructions, in the instructions that you're going to download and look at, it tells you where to send an email to let me know that you have submitted a map and you'd like me to analyze it. Now, I will, as a matter of practice, check back periodically to see if people have submitted them and they didn't email me. But just to make sure I get a head start on the analysis, if you could just drop me a line that you've done that, that's the best way to do it. Now, let's say that you want to share your map, but you don't want to share your map. You want us to see the map, but you don't want everybody to see the map. Maybe you want to stay a little bit anonymous. Because if you recall, when you go back to the maps, when you go back to the published map, my map, published maps, notice it has who the owner is, right? Maybe you don't want everybody to know that you've submitted a map, or you don't want your name attached to it necessarily. There are ways to share a map without sharing the map, without publishing the map. So you could go back to, I'm going to go back to my maps. I'm going to unpublish this. Oh, I did unpublish it apparently. I'm going to unpublish it. And then you can click the share button. What that does, it creates a URL that you copy and just drop in an email to me. Then I'm the only person that can see the map, or anybody else you shared it with. They're the only people that'll be able to see it, duplicate it, analyze it, do anything with it. So it's available to anyone you want to share it with, but it's not available or searchable on the published maps page. So I realize it was not the cleanest demonstration because I'm not able to get to all of the tools, and I'm going to find out what that's all about. But I encourage you, if you're interested in drawing an online map, to go home, to print those instructions out, to watch that quick 20-minute video, and then get started. Get started drawing maps. The whole point with this workshop and with creating the online map tool is to engage as many residents as possible, because this is your community. This is your city. This is your process. And we want to hear from you. The council wants to hear from you. And anything that's shared, either via the dialogue with me via email or here at our workshops, all of that's collected and it's all shared with the city council. Things that are outside of a public hearing, I synthesize and put in a staff report. So they're going to see it in writing in a staff report. We had this many interactions with residents. We received so many emails that said X, Y, and Z. And then, so there's that option. And then come to the public hearings. Come to the public hearing, share your opinions, speak about what it is that you're looking for. And then the council can hear that and use that information to inform the decision-making process. So are there any other questions? That really does kind of conclude our presentation for tonight. I realize this was not the best demonstration, but you kind of got a feel for it. You kind of got the gist of it. I think that if you were home and you were playing on your own computer, it would make a lot of sense to you. Oh, really quickly. One thing that I did not show you because I was distracted. Let's say, you know, this is a really pretty, let's say this is a big area. Maybe I want to split that up a little bit. You can actually go down one level. You can go to the block level. Click the little block button. This is really important stuff here. And then click in one of those boxes and notice that it made a whole bunch of other little boxes inside of it. Those are census blocks. You can split census block groups, which are called precincts in this software. You cannot split census blocks, the smallest unit of measurement. So whereas I can, this area here has to all be in one district. Back to my little paintbrush. Notice how I can now add much smaller groups. I can add much smaller pieces of land than those big blocks. Okay. So you do that by clicking on the block button and then clicking in the big census block group / precinct, and then that takes you to much smaller units of measurement. Does that make sense? Okay. Whereas you can split these big groups here, you cannot split these smaller groups within districts. I could not put part of this, I could not put part of this in District 1 and part of it in District 2. The entire neighborhood, that entire group of homes must be in the same district. Okay. So that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions or if there's anything else that you wanted to share. My email is practically everywhere in this process. It's on the instructions, it's on the paper map kits. I am very open to taking emails or telephone calls from people. I'm trying to make the software work and I got a question. I remember what you said about XYZ. Just give me a call. I'd be more than happy to help you with that. Also, if you want to submit a map, whether it's paper or online, again, just shoot me a quick email, tell me that you've done so, and then I can look for it and we can start analyzing it to make sure it gets in to the next council meeting. Well, if there are no other questions, that concludes our workshop tonight. Thank you for coming.